Hey, so how are you doing in knocking out your goals for 2022? You might be thinking, well, it's only January, I have plenty of time, and I would suggest now is the time to get started. But today I'd like to talk to you about the absolute key to crushing your goals in the upcoming year. So let's talk about that, but first, let's head on over to the office. Let's go. All right, well, you probably figured out I'm not really at my office. I'm at Mile 42 Coffee here in Loveland, Ohio, one of my favorite coffee shops to hang out at. And I love having offices anywhere. That's one of the things I like about the real estate business. I used to have a really nice office when I first got into real estate. We literally had an indoor waterfall. It was amazing. I had a corner office, lots of glass. It was amazing. And what I started to realize was people didn't necessarily want to come to my office to do business. Instead, they would say, hey, well, can we meet at Starbucks? Or can we meet at a coffee shop or something like that? And I was like, don't you want to see my office? It's kind of cool. I've got an indoor waterfall. And they were like, no, we don't really want to see that. So I think offices are overrated. I'm happy to work from wherever, especially coffee shops and things like that. So anyways, I wanted to talk to you about your goals for the year 2022. How are you doing on that? Have you accomplished your goals? Probably not. Most of us are still working on them, but some people haven't even gotten off the launch pad yet. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. And I really wanted to talk about the number one key to crushing your goals in the upcoming year. And that comes down to one thing, and it's called programming your reticular activating system. And you might be thinking, my reticular what? Your reticular activating system. Did you know your brain has this little mechanism in it that causes you to ignore extraneous details and information that are coming in? Because you're getting hit with hundreds of thousands of messages from all over every day. So your brain just can't process all that information. So what it does is it has this reticular activating system that pushes out non-essential messages, so you just don't get blown away with all of it. The problem is that sometimes your brain can shut off things that are actually important because you can get distracted. Maybe you have these goals that are really important, but then you get distracted by these other things that seem to be urgent. So your reticular activating system ends up shutting out your goals, the really important stuff, just to take in the critical urgent stuff that's right there on your plate at that time. So you have to learn to program your reticular activating system to make sure you're pushing out the correct messages and focusing on the things that are really important, like your goals, okay? So how do you program your reticular activating system? Man, I am so glad you asked. Here's how you do that. The best way to program your reticular activating system is to write down the things that you want to focus on, and then review them often, at least every day. So there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can write down your goals. If you don't have your goals written down on paper or in a digital file or something, or I use a Remarkable. If you don't have an electronic notepad or something where you're writing down your goals, they really aren't goals. They're just wishes, hopes, dreams, but not really goals. And so the way that you want to program your reticular activating system is start out by writing down your goals. Write down everything that's important. You know, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? And so put these down as your goals, write them down, and then review them often. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. One One way is you can get a notebook that you keep as like a journal, and every day you write down your goals every day and you review it every day. And I did this for many years. There's a guy named Brian Tracy, who's one of the most influential people in my life for business. He has a book on goals that's amazing. And he talked about the importance of writing down your goals every day from memory. So you don't go back to the previous day and see what your goals were yesterday. You go back every day and you write down what your goals are from memory. So on day one, I did this. I wrote down my goals, and day two, from memory, I went back to my notebook and I wrote down my goals, and then I looked at it, and some of the goals were different on day two. and then on day three, I wrote down my top 10 goals again, and they're a little different again. And the reason they're different is because things that aren't quite as important, over time, they start falling off of the list. So there are certain things that were goals of mine on that first day, but then over time, I started to realize, well, those things aren't really even that important. So my goals started to take shape, and after a couple of months of doing this, I started to have such clarity about what I am doing on this planet and why I am actually here. It just was life-changing. So very cool. So writing them down in a notebook is extremely helpful. But another thing I've learned that's very helpful for me is I get these wall sticky notepads. They're like 20 inches by 30 inches. My wife has somehow come to allow me to do this. But I'll take these big notepads, and with a marker, I'll write my goals on these big notepads, and I'll put them in prominent places. Like I'll have them in my restroom or in my closet, even in my office at my home. I'll have sticky notes with these goals, and then I see it all the time. So every day I'm seeing my top 10 goals like all the time. It keeps me focused on it because I'm seeing it constantly what my goals are. Another thing that I do, though, it's not just about goals, but sometimes I'll have some important strategy that I want to focus on. And so I program my reticular activating system by writing it on one of these notepads, and I'll stick it on the wall, and it keeps me focused on this thing that's so important. So writing it down, making it visible, reviewing it all the time. Another thing that I found that's helpful is getting just little sticky notes. And if there's something that I'm trying to focus on, I'll write it down on this little sticky note, and maybe I'll stick it on my the horn of my car, my dashboard of my car. And so every day I'm seeing that sticky note there, and I'm seeing, hey, this is an important thing. I can't forget about this. I've got to do this. This is very important. Maybe it's a quote. Maybe I'll read a book and I'll see this very important quote that I don't want to forget, and I want to program my reticular activating system to focus on this quote. It's such a great statement that I'll write it down, and maybe it's on a sticky note in my car, maybe it's on one of these great big sticky notes on a wall in my house. Even where I work out in my basement, I've got in front of my elliptical, there's a wall there, and I've got all these sticky notes, like the big ones, posted right there. So I'm reading it while I'm on the elliptical. I'm reading it while I'm working out, and it really helps me to stay focused on whatever those things are that are really important in my life. So, and sometimes it's business, but sometimes maybe it's a spiritual goal. Maybe it's some spiritual focus that's important to me, or maybe it's a physical health type goal, and I'll have that on the wall there in front of me, or have it in my notepad so I'm reviewing it all the time. Or maybe it's health, but maybe it's family. Maybe it's a family goal. So I would encourage you to program your reticular activating system, and do that by writing down your goals and the things that are important, writing down and review them all the time. If you want to crush your goals in 2022, program your reticular activating system so that you can focus on those things that you really want to accomplish. All right, go have a great 2022.